All right, so here's our solution from last time, taco truck. You guys can laugh, snicker, and steer all you want. I cannot hear you, so it doesn't bother me. But burrito van, that we're going to go ahead and continue building an application throughout the series based off of that. Hopefully, eventually building up a restaurant and maybe a point of sale system or something. But for now, we're just going to build another sample application. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to do something that allows us to go through an array. Let's do a number adding application. Okay. So what I want to do here, and when we go through this time, I'm actually going to name things properly. Skipping around slightly in my slideshow there, but when we get to it, I'll point out what I did. So to do this number stuff, we need, let's do a label. Okay, so what I did there is I added a label onto the form, and it defaults with label 1 as the value, the text value. And if we go to the name, it also has a label 1 as the name. Now, if you remember from last time, the name is what we use in code to reference what's in that value or in any control, and the text is what's actually displayed on there. So we're going to change this display to be numbers to add. All right, we'll go to that in just a second too. That was awesome. Okay, we're going to add a text box in place, if I can find it. There we go. Now, I generally get in the habit of trying to name things right away when I add them. Other people like to just drag all their controls in place and name them then. That's fine. Either way is fine as long as you don't forget. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that this time because it depends. Sometimes if I know how the design is supposed to look already, I'll go ahead and I'll put one in at a time. And oftentimes I do what's called mocking up the UI, and I'll just drag one control at a time and name it as I'm doing it. If I don't know what it looks like ahead of time, then I will go ahead and try to just drag all the controls in place. I do not have anything mocked up right now. This is all kind of just as we go. I was going to build this example beforehand, so I was a little more prepared, and I decided, it'd be a great opportunity to just show how to build a cheesy little application here. So, numbers added. Now, I don't actually have to hit right-click in properties each time. If you notice, every time I go to a different control, the properties window changes for each control that I'm looking at. I just force a habit. I don't know why, but all right. Label, text box. Now here, I'm not going to set initial text. I could if I wanted to. I could, I could set an initial text, and when the application starts, it says welcome. Yeah, I'm not going to in this case. I want it to be blank. We're going to change the name of it to be Now, I named this thing TXT numbers to add, and in a little bit we're going to go into what's called naming conventions, and I'll explain why we did this. For now, just keep in mind or take note of the fact that I named it this way. We're going to do the same thing with the button and the other text box as well. Maybe you'll notice a pattern here. I should probably change the text to that too. Okay, so I've got a couple controls on here. Make this a little smaller. We don't need it that big. Okay, so we got numbers to add. Well, we've got a label called numbers, numbers to add. We've got a text box here, numbers to add. We've got a button here called add, and we got another text box called results. Okay, so with event-driven programming, like I remember I mentioned in the last video, and if I didn't, then that's good I mentioned it now, to link code with a particular control and an event on a control, you can do it in two ways, or probably more than two ways, but one of two ways that I'm going to show here. First is you can double-click on a control, and that's what you saw before when I double-clicked on the label on accident. It created a method for me that basically says whenever I click on that label, execute this code. I don't actually want that, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that out right now. And that's one way you can do it. That's usually the easiest way to do it. But if you want to do things like, it'll handle a default, like in this case a click event, but say I wanted to change when the client side changed, or I want to handle, I don't know, say I have a method that changes the font on my button, and I want to capture that, whenever the font on my button changes, I want to change the color of the button as well. So I can add a method here, but the only way to do that would be to go into the properties window and click on this lightning bolt, the events, and then I can select which event I want to capture or I want to write code for. Okay, so in this case, we're just going to do the click event, which again is the default. There's default events for each of the controls, and I don't remember all on the top of my head. The best way to find out is to double-click on the control and see what event is there. Or you can click on the properties window, and it should already be set to the default event. Now, you noticed what I did there is in that spot, I just double-clicked right in the text, and it added the method name for me automatically. Okay, so btn add underscore click, and what we're saying is the button add click event is being handled here. This is the same thing we covered last time. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take a number. I want to take the value. Let's do. Okay. So I'm going into things I didn't really want to go into yet, but that's all right. What we want to do is we want to get the value from the text box, and we're going to assign it to a number, right? And you got a nice ugly red line right here. Now, first off, the blue line right here is a resharper thing. It's saying that the method naming rules, this method auto-generated name for the method doesn't match the suggested naming rules, and that's something that resharper has. I know I said I was going to disable resharper, but I decided not to because it offers too many valuable features that you guys might like to use as well. So in this case, Visual Studio is yelling at me saying that if I try to compile this, it's going to throw an error saying that it can't convert the source type of string to an integer. All right, so if we look back at our slide, this one here, how do I go back? That's how. If we look at the slides here, we see an integer holds a whole number, and a string holds one or more characters. So technically, a string can hold a number, but it can also hold things that aren't a number, and that's what it's complaining about. And so when I look at the textbox.text, it's going to return to me a string. So to take whatever value I put into that text box and say, here you go, it's all packaged as a string. You do whatever you want with it now.